Hi, welcome to Wednesday. Today is the 23rd of June, and it is the last day for the Mercury retrograde, which is wonderful. Tomorrow is a full moon, the 24th, and it is also the last supermoon of the year, which is another really good thing. Just real quick, anybody that's in this area on the 26th, which is this Saturday, I will be in Sandusky at the Carousel Museum, the Merry-Go-Round Museum, from noon to 3. They're letting us walk through, even see where they're refurbishing the horses, and see what the ghosts are there. There'll be a talk. So come on out. It should be fun. Nobody under 18, unfortunately, but it'll be great. The Zoom on the 9th of July is the full. The next one will be on Monday, the 19th of July. Okie doke. Today I'm going to talk about a murder case. Now, I have to, first of all, when I see on the news that somebody is missing or dead or murdered or whatever, I do not, never have, never will call the police department in that city, the county, the state. If somebody wants me to work on a murder case or that kind of a case, the police department has got to call me. I never volunteer. And the only reason that I don't volunteer is that every time something like that happens, all these psychics come out of the woodwork and call the police department. And, oh, she's in a creek by rocks. And I don't lump myself in with all of that. And the other thing that I have to add to it, if the family calls me, and it has to be an immediate family member that would call, they need to tell whoever is working on the case with the law enforcement agency that they want me involved. Otherwise, I do not. I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. So those are just things you need to keep in mind. Unfortunately, when you take just the United States, no place else in the world, just the United States, you have, between murders and people missing, and there's so much bad stuff that goes on. So I just have to be careful how I do that. Okay, this one happened quite a while ago. I got a call from one of the, and I call them alphabet enforcement agencies, like the FBI, the DEA, the CIA, the NCIS. They're just alphabet enforcement agencies. There was a disturbing murder out of state. They had 3 suspects, all family related. This is what they told me. The 22-year-old who was murdered, her name was Debbie, seemed to be the only normal member of this particular family. 2 of the family members had been, and these were the people that they were suspecting killing her. 2 of the family members were persons that had been in jail or prison for drugs, stolen property, carjacking. Both of these guys were troublemakers. The one that was 27, his name was Clayman, and the 29-year-old was Jimmy Joe. The 3rd suspect was a gal, 26 years old. Her name was Missy. They were all from the same side of the family, but none were siblings. They were like uncles to each other or cousins, and Debbie, the murdered girl, was also one of the cousins. Debbie was the murdered girl, just got a degree and got a nice position at her library. Apparently, that's what her degree was in. All four of these people, the three that were suspects plus Debbie, all lived in basically the same neighborhood, but none in the same house. And all three of these relatives had alibis given to them by their relatives. And however, because of that, the police didn't think very highly of their alibis. Debbie's parents were planning her funeral, but the coroner was taking a longer than usual length of time to release the body. They wanted to get her buried, but they had to wait for that, which in this case was a good thing, because it's better for me to talk to the victim before their funeral. The killer or killers tried to make Debbie's death look like a suicide. These three people were, I'm just going to tell you, they were dumb as a box of rocks. That's all I can tell you. They were just, she had drugs in her blood and alcohol. Her wrists were cut. And apparently Debbie never took or used drugs, never touched alcohol. She wouldn't even take an aspirin for a headache. She had just met a nice guy she was excited about. They had only one date at this time. She, again, had just graduated from college. She had this great position at the library. She still lived at home with her mom and dad. Now, their house was in the same neighborhood as the other relatives, but just a little better section. And there was a little cottage on her parents' property that they rented out. The little cottage is where her body was found, in an empty bathtub. No water in the tub. And there was no water because her father was fixing the plumbing in the bathroom, and that's why they didn't have a renter at this time. She came home from work on a Thursday night around 9 o'clock. She had a bowl of soup, watched a little TV with her parents, then went up to bed. She had to get up early on Friday to work in her office at the library for an event that the library was having. She was already gone when her parents woke up, they thought. It was after lunch her father went out to the cottage and found her body. Again, the three people who they suspected were relatives of hers, but she did not hang out with these people at all. Her parents thought the last time the families were together was at a family wedding 2-3 months before this. The parents asked Debbie, did you talk to them at the wedding? Or the parents thought that Debbie had talked to the cousins at the wedding, especially Jimmy Joe. As a matter of fact, she had danced with him a couple of times, and they had been out on the balcony talking. On the way home, her mother asked, what did Jimmy Joe want? Why was he, hanging around? Debbie just laughed, and she said, he actually was going to come to our house and talk to you and Dad about a loan. He wants to open up a body shop specializing in motorcycles. I asked Jimmy Joe why was he coming to, you and Dad, and he said out of all the family, he figured we were the only ones who had money, and now that I was out of college, that you probably had extra money because you weren't paying tuition. So he figured you would be the one to ask for a loan. Okay. We told Debbie there was no way they would ever lend any money to anyone, especially Jimmy Joe. His parents have filed bankruptcy at least 2 times that they knew of. He had no common sense, and besides, he was always in trouble. Debbie was in her parents' house. Debbie was in her parents' and her house when I got there. So I saw Debbie. Debbie was shocked that I could talk and see her, but she was really glad because she had a whole lot to tell me. I asked her what happened. On Thursday, she went upstairs, had just gotten in bed, and Jimmy Joe texted her and said he had something to tell her and show her. She said, okay, but it was almost 11 p.m. and she was already in bed. She would meet with him tomorrow. Jimmy Joe asked if her parents were still up. I said, no, they were already asleep. He said this was really important. Could he just come over real fast, and I'll just show you what I want to show you. I'll just meet you at the back door. Debbie said he didn't sound like he was high or drunk, and she didn't want him waking up her parents creating a fuss. So she said, fine. 15 minutes later, he was at the back door. He didn't want to come in, but he asked her to come out. As soon as she got outside, he shoved a gun in her face. And he asked if anyone was in the cottage. And I told him no. We went into the cottage, and it wasn't locked. It never was locked unless we had renters in there. He said him and a couple of his friends, he didn't say who, were going to hold me for ransom. He said, your parents will pay anything to get you back. She said, you're crazy. I told him he was crazy, and I was going to leave, that this was ridiculous. And he said that his buddy was in the house with a gun and would kill my parents if I didn't cooperate. He took out of his jacket a bottle of pills and said his buddies did not want me to see them, so these were pills that were going to make me sleep. Then they were going to take me to where they were going to hold me until the parents paid the money. And I said, he poured out maybe like 6 or 7 pills. And he said, take these pills. And she said, that's too many. And he said, take them or I'm going to give my buddy this side and he's going to kill your mom and dad. He said, they're just sleeping pills. I really had no choice. I swallowed them with booze that he gave me from a flask that he had in his pocket. I almost gagged when he gave them to me. I don't know how long it took, but I was looking down at my body on the floor. I could not believe I was dead. Jimmy Joe was pacing around. He was just texting someone. He looked scared and really upset. All of a sudden, Clayman, the 27-year-old, came in asking him what the hell happened. He said, I don't know. She took the pills like I gave them to her, and then she started shaking all over. Then she just stopped breathing. I didn't know what to do. Then Missy comes in, the third cousin. It's already 3 o'clock in the morning. I've been dead now for a couple of hours. So Missy tells Jimmy Joe and Clayman that they will have to make it look like a suicide because they didn't want anybody to think she was murdered. Because in their world, she really wasn't murdered. It was an accidental death. They wiped the pill bottle off and put it in my hand so that my fingerprints were on the pill bottle. Then they got a knife from the kitchen. No, it's a little kitchenette, actually. It's not very big. Missy told them to put my body in the tub before they sliced my wrists. She said it wouldn't make a mess with the blood, and that she says, and Debbie's such a neat freak, she wouldn't bleed all over the floor. So they put the stopper in the tub and cut my wrists, which, believe it or not, they had a really hard time doing. And they turned on the water. No water. Dad was working on the plumbing. The three of them were staring down at me. My wrists had hardly any blood. Of course, I've been dead for a while now, so I guess they didn't bleed very much. Then they were fighting. Should they move me or bury my body? Set fire to the cottage so that nobody would know exactly what happened. Missy, I guess she's the brains of the outfit, said, she's in her PJs and a bathrobe. We better leave her in the tub, put her fingerprints on the knife. So that's what they did. They put the knife in her hand. They will know it was never a suicide. They even thought about leaving a note, but didn't do it. They left. The detectives did not believe it was suicide when her father called them. They couldn't find any booze, even though they could smell it on her breath. They took the flask with them, so they didn't see any booze anywhere. There was no water, and how could I get the pills down? How did I cut my wrist? No blood. How could I do it if I was dead? So all of this added up, and they were pretty sure that she had been murdered, that there was no way it was a suicide. And the detectives worked trying to figure out how or why she was killed and who for sure did it. Missy, Jimmy Joe, Clayman all took off to a cabin in the woods, maybe 35, 40 miles away. I asked Debbie if she knew where they were. She did. She wanted to know how, and she heard them talking about staying low for a while. Clayman was so mad at Jimmy Joe he had a pocket knife and stabbed him in the arm while they were at the cabin. If Missy hadn't stopped them, they probably would have killed each other. Before they went to the cabin, Clayman wanted to stop at his place for some supplies, and he had drugs and some money hid. He took half of it with them. I watched him at the cabin. They started drinking. They started doing drugs. Besides fighting, they were just so high. When the detectives brought them in, their relatives again gave them phony alibis. But with the information that Debbie gave me, they punched holes in their stories. They kept them apart, and when they were interviewed, each alone, the detectives used the exact words and sentences that Debbie had given me. So each one of them thought the other was turning on them and pointing the finger at them. So the three of them just talked and talked and talked. Missy and Clayman both said Jimmy Joe had given her too many pills. They are still in prison. Jimmy Joe's in for life. Clayman is out in another 4 years, and Missy is just getting out next month. I cannot help any law enforcement agencies if I cannot find the victim. I'm not a psychic. I cannot do it without information from them. Luckily, in this case, she did know them. She did know who killed them, and basically she solved her own crime. The family was not happy, obviously, that she was dead, but they were content that everybody was in prison where they should be and that it was a done thing. So this is just one of many, 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 many murders that I have solved for the police or helped them solve. There was a fairly nice reward for information on her death. I never take those. I feel that the families are the victims here. They should keep the money. I don't do that. But it's been interesting, and I've met a lot of criminals, which is something that I would never have expected in my life. So next week, we are going to be talking about aliens and one of the children that we fostered when she was young. And everybody wants to hear this story, so it will be next week, Wednesday. Have a great week. Try to stop out on Saturday at the Carousel Museum in Sandusky, and we'll talk again. Thanks so much.